Welcome to Breaking News to Trading Moves. Today, we're going to explore the implications across the AI ecosystem following a pretty attention-grabbing corporate valuation that's been making waves.
Yeah, it certainly has. It gives us a lot to talk about regarding capital flows and what it means for different players in the tech space.
We want to look at how this specific event might be influencing investment, supply chains, and even existing business models.
Okay, so the core fact here, the headline that's driving this discussion, is OpenAI achieving that $500 billion valuation.
$500 billion, it's a number that definitely stands out.
And it was solidified, right?
Yeah.
Through a $6.6 billion employee share sale. An investor group led by SoftBank spearheaded that. So it's not just theoretical.
Right, it's based on a concrete transaction. And there were also some revenue figures attached, weren't there? Something about H1 2025.
Yeah, the reported number floating around was about $4.3 billion in projected revenue for the first half of 2025.
Okay, so $4.3 billion in projected half-year revenue alongside a $500 billion valuation. That comparison alone gives the market a very clear reference point.
It really does. And what a milestone like this valuation does, especially that half-trillion scale, is it effectively re-rates the leaders in the AI space.
Re-rates them. How so?
Well, it sort of validates the huge global build-out of compute power and data centers that's happening. It signals AI moving from, let's say, an experimental phase to more of an industrial one.
Okay, industrial scale.
Yeah, and this valuation event, it helps investors categorize things more clearly. You start to see who's likely getting the big capital inflows, the necessary spending, versus maybe who's seeing their valuation squeezed a bit because their story doesn't quite match up to this new benchmark.
I think we should probably linger on that idea of re-rating because it's not just about buzz or excitement, is it?
Not at all.
It feels like the market is now pricing in almost guaranteed future cash flows for certain suppliers, the infrastructure providers. I mean, the investment needed to just support a $500 billion AI company is... well, it's staggering.
It is absolutely staggering.
It tells investors that future AI returns are being valued at a premium, and that premium can only really be sustained by huge ongoing capital spending for, the next 5 years at least?
That's the implication. It really frames the strategic context.
Yeah. The whole investment thesis changes almost overnight.
Exactly. Before this, AI was, exciting, full of potential. After this valuation, AI is a confirmed colossal buyer of very specific goods and services. That's the shift.
Okay, so let's start with who benefits. The winners. Category 1 seems obvious. The companies actually fueling the machine. The compute and chip providers.
Makes sense. The rationale is pretty straightforward. A $500 billion valuation for an AI model company points directly to an almost insatiable demand for model training and inference capacity.
Right. Companies need to train these massive models, bigger and faster than competitors. And then they need to run them constantly, 247, serving customers globally.
And that demand translates directly into hardware orders. Lots of them. We're talking high-performance GPUs, specialized accelerators, the whole silicon stack needed for large-scale AI.
So if you're looking to justify that $500 billion valuation through development, a huge chunk of your initial spending just has to go straight into compute infrastructure. It's like the cost of entry, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's the basic building block. We're talking about the core engines driving this AI arms race, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
The sheer scale needed to make that $500 billion number make sense, you have to buy it in silicon. And you have to keep buying it as models get bigger and more complex. It makes these hardware companies totally central to this accelerated push for compute power.
It's structurally necessary spending now.
Precisely.
So the specific winners here are names people will recognize. First up, obviously, is NVIDIA, ticker NVDA.
Yep, NVIDIA, still the primary supplier. They benefit hugely from the ongoing need for top-tier GPUs. And let's not forget their whole ecosystem, CUDA, the software stack. That gives them a really strong grip.
That software moat is powerful. But NVDA's dominance is pretty clear. What about others? Is the demand big enough to lift other boats?
Well, yeah. The demand is so massive that it does open the door. Next in line is Advanced Micro Devices, ticker AMD.
AMD, okay.
They're positioned pretty well to gain from just the sheer volume increase, but also the growing diversity of accelerator orders. Think about the big buyers, the hyperscalers.
Like Microsoft, Google.
Exactly. They might face supply issues with NVIDIA, or they might just strategically want to diversify their sources. Plus, they're developing their own chips, too. So as they diversify, AMD becomes a very logical second source.
Okay, but let's push on that AMD point. How real is that? We hear about NVIDIA's CUDA ecosystem being almost insurmountable. Is AMD gaining ground mostly just a hope from investors wanting diversification, or is there actual substance there? Could AMD really take meaningful share in the next, say, 18 months because of this spending validation?
That's a fair question. And it's probably a bit of both, but I think the substance is definitely growing.
Okay.
Look, the scale we're talking about, this $500 billion validation, it dictates two main things. One, the supply needed is just vast. NVIDIA probably can't meet the entire world's demand alone, at least not immediately or efficiently for everyone.
Right. Scarcity is real.
So the big customers have to look for alternatives. That's where AMD comes in with products like their MI300 series. They're aiming for competitive performance, maybe at a better price point if buyers commit to volume.
So cost and availability become factors.
Exactly. And remember, the hyperscalers, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they're also building their own custom silicon. When they talk about diversifying, it's not just chip brands. They're looking at the whole stack interconnects memory types. AMD is making progress there too.
So the validation of AI spending at this level just creates such a huge demand that the whole supply chain benefits.
Yes, the whole supply chain gets an uplift. But it's that strategic need for resilience and cost management that really boosts AMD's potential. They become a crucial part of that diversification strategy for the big players.
Got it. So the sheer size of the AI economy, underlined by this valuation, is kind of the tide lifting AMD's boat, even if NVIDIA is still captaining the main ship.
That's a good way to put it. This isn't just about software. The battle is being fought right now in the chip fabs and the data center design meetings.
Okay, so moving on from the raw hardware, let's look at the next layer up, the platforms. Category 2 winners, hosting and platform development. This is where the AI models actually live and get used by businesses, right?
Precisely. The rationale here is that as enterprises spend more on AI deploying models, using tools that money inevitably flows through the big existing infrastructure providers, the hyperscalers.
Why is that inevitable? Can't companies just build their own?
Well, some might try, but honestly, most enterprises just don't have the budget or the specialized talent or, frankly, the risk appetite to build and manage these incredibly complex, cutting-edge AI systems entirely in-house. It's much easier, faster, and often safer to use a managed cloud environment.
Okay, so let's talk about that enterprise spending. Where is it actually going? It's not just abstract anymore.
No, it's going into concrete things, like model hosting itself, deploying and integrating these copilots that are showing up everywhere, especially in productivity software.
Right, the tools that help write emails or summarize documents.
Exactly. And also a whole range of specialized AI tools for development, for deployment, and really importantly, for governance and compliance within companies. The platforms handle a lot of the complexity.
And these copilots you mentioned, they're automating some pretty fundamental knowledge work, aren't they? Drafting things, coding help, scheduling.
Absolutely. And they're not just standalone tools. They're getting woven right into the daily workflow for millions of office workers. The hyperscalers already have those customers, those relationships. It makes rolling out these copilots much smoother, which makes them the logical place for companies to put their AI budget.
So that puts Microsoft, ticker MSFT, right in the center.
Definitely. Microsoft is a huge beneficiary. They're a top hyperscale cloud provider. Azure hosts tons of enterprise models and tools, and they've integrated AI deeply into their existing Office suite and other software.
They've leveraged that installed base incredibly well. They seem like a major toll booth for corporate AI adoption. You pay for the cloud infrastructure, you pay for the Copilot subscription.
They collect coming and going, essentially. And similarly, you have Alphabet, ticker GOOGL, another massive hyperscaler benefiting from all this model hosting. They have a huge developer base, a huge enterprise base. Their global infrastructure means they capture a big slice of this accelerating AI spend too. Whether companies are using Google's own models or hosting competitors like, say, OpenAI's models on their platform.
It's interesting how the hyperscalers are positioned. They kind of win regardless of which specific AI model becomes dominant.
That's a key point.
If a company uses OpenAI, maybe they pay Microsoft for Azure. If they use Google's Gemini, they pay Google Cloud. They're somewhat insulated from the model-level competition because they own the delivery infrastructure.
Exactly. This $500 billion valuation basically says AI is a proven massive market. And that proof immediately benefits the companies that own the pipes, the delivery mechanism. The hyperscalers are the essential go-between, turning that raw silicon from winner category 1 into usable business applications.
Okay, so we've covered the chips and the cloud platforms. Now let's switch focus back to the physical world, because this isn't just about software, right? There's a massive physical build-out needed.
Oh, absolutely. We need to think about this almost like an industrial revolution for infrastructure.
So our third category of winners, the physical infrastructure. Data centers and power, mainly.
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road, or maybe where the electrons meet the silicon. Operating AI at the scale implied by OpenAI's valuation demands enormous physical capacity, and that valuation has basically lit a fire under a global industrial construction boom, the likes of which we haven't seen in tech for a long time.
You mentioned power. I've read some things about the power demands being just astronomical. We're not just plugging servers into the wall anymore.
Not even close. We're talking about needing dedicated power generation, almost private power grids, just for AI.
Wow. Can you walk us through the specific physical needs driving this?
Sure. First, you need massive colocation capacity. That's the physical building, the specialized space to house these huge clusters of GPUs or accelerators. These aren't your old-school server rooms. They're incredibly dense, purpose-built facilities designed to handle extreme heat.
Okay, specialized buildings.
Second, and this is critical, is the dedicated power. We're talking about potentially needing a gigawatt of power or more for a single large AI data center campus.
A gigawatt. That's like a city's worth of power.
A smaller, medium-sized city, yeah.
Yeah.
It often means building entirely new electrical substations, maybe even dedicated power plants nearby.
A gigawatt. That really puts the scale into perspective. It moves this beyond just tech into utilities and heavy industry.
It absolutely does. Then third, you have cooling. All those chips generate immense heat. So you need advanced cooling, often liquid cooling systems. Standard air conditioning just can't cope with the thermal density.
Liquid cooling, okay.
And finally, you need the high-speed interconnects. Specialized fiber optic networks, sophisticated networking gear, just to link all these computational resources together so they can talk to each other instantly without creating bottlenecks.
So this valuation basically guarantees a pipeline of business for companies that can deliver gigawatts of power, advanced cooling, and massive specialized buildings over the next, say, 5 years.
That seems to be the case. The demand is locked in by the scale of the AI ambition.
So who benefits most directly from this need for bricks, mortar, and watts?
The companies specializing in data center real estate are right in the crosshairs. They own the physical space and manage the complexity. Equinix, ticker EQIX, is a prime example.
EQIX, a leading data center REIT.
Exactly, a real estate investment trust. They own and operate these huge specialized data center buildings. And they benefit because AI needs the biggest, most power-hungry, most sophisticated facilities they can build.
Okay. And who else is in that space?
Another major player is Digital Realty, ticker DLR. They're also heavily involved in developing and operating these large-scale data centers, benefiting directly as companies need these new, highly specialized build-outs for their AI workloads.
DLR. Got it.
So the key takeaway here is that the AI boom isn't just software. It's a massive industrial build-out. This valuation confirms the demand, guaranteeing that the consumption of compute, power, physical space, it's all going to escalate. It makes these data center REITs and the power infrastructure suppliers behind them absolutely critical beneficiaries. They're providing the literal foundation for this entire ecosystem.
Okay, we've looked at the winners, the chip makers, the cloud platforms, the physical infrastructure providers. They seem set to benefit from the capital inflows validated by that $500 billion number. Now we need to talk about the other side of the coin.
Right. The market dynamic usually has two sides. Where money flows in, it sometimes flows out elsewhere, or at least valuations get reassessed.
So let's transition to the entities that might be facing some pressure, maybe seeing their market positions compress a bit as capital gets more focused.
This brings us to what we can call losers category 1.
Yeah.
The small cap AI story names.
The smaller players.
Yeah. The rationale here involves capital rotation and, frankly, rationalization. When you get a huge established valuation like OpenAI's $500 billion, a real marquee print investor attention and capital tend to gravitate towards the proven, established platforms, the ones with demonstrable scale and clear market positions.
And the immediate effect on the smaller companies is their valuations get squeezed.
Often, yes. We talk about multiple compression. It means their valuation relative to their actual revenue or maybe projected earnings starts to shrink. A lot of these smaller AI story stocks were trading at really high multiples based purely on future potential, maybe 20 times expected sales or even higher.
Based on the narrative.
Exactly. Now you have a validated leader like OpenAI setting a still massive but more established benchmark. Investors look at that and then look at the smaller players and say, okay, does this smaller company's valuation still make sense relative to the leader? Often, the answer leads to reducing those high expectations in multiples.
It becomes harder for them to justify those sky-high valuations when there's a $500 billion anchor in the market.
Much harder. The market now has a clearer reference point for what scale, execution, and maybe technological leadership actually look like at the top end. It starts demanding more substance from the smaller companies, not just the story.
Which specific companies fall into this category? The ones maybe relying more on the AI narrative without that kind of scale?
Well, some names often mentioned in this context include C3.ai, ticker AI.
AI.
Also BigBear.ai, ticker BBAI.
BBAR?
And SoundHound AI, ticker SOUN.
SOUN, okay.
For these kinds of players, it's a double challenge. First, competing for investor attention is harder when the spotlight is firmly on the giants. Second, they face immense competition for actual resources.
Resources
Like top engineering talent, which is scarce and expensive, like affordable access to compute time. Remember winner category 1. The giants are buying up huge amounts of that capacity. And even getting partnerships or customer deals can be tougher when you're up against companies validated at the multi-hundred-billion-dollar level.
So the market naturally prioritizes scale and established infrastructure after a big validation like this.
It tends to. It often leads to a flight to perceived quality, or at least perceived scale, leaving the more speculative plays looking more vulnerable.
It's not necessarily punitive, just rational capital allocation based on a new market reality.
Precisely. The capital isn't vanishing from AI overall. It's just getting more concentrated, flowing into the parts of the ecosystem that directly enable or benefit from that $500 billion spending blueprint we talked about.
Okay, let's look at another area facing pressure. Losers category 2. The IT services and outsourcing sector. This feels like a more direct threat, where AI isn't just influencing valuations, but potentially replacing the core business model.
Yeah, this is about agentic AI posing a direct challenge. The core business for many of these firms has been providing human labor for relatively routine IT tasks.
Bodies for hours, as it's sometimes called.
Exactly. That model is now a prime target for automation. Agentic AI, meaning AI systems that can plan and execute sequences of tasks on their own, combined with other advanced automation, is starting to reduce the need for that traditional, routine IT work.
What kind of work are we talking about specifically?
Things like basic system maintenance, writing simple code for small updates, routine network monitoring, level 1 help desk support, the kind of tasks that form the bread and butter of many large outsourcing contracts.
And you're saying clients are noticing this potential?
We're seeing evidence of budget reallocation. Clients aren't necessarily slashing their overall IT budgets, but they are starting to shift funds away from those legacy human hour-based services.
And where's that money going instead?
It's being redirected toward the core AI platforms and tools, the winners we discussed in Section 3, like Microsoft and Google's cloud platforms and associated AI services.
The logic being, why pay a human consultant for a standard IT task if an automated AI agent within the cloud platform can do it faster, maybe more reliably, and ultimately cheaper?
That's exactly the client calculation. It's a direct result of efficiency gains.
Mm-hmm.
As AI gets better at handling these generalized, repeatable tasks, the service providers who relied on armies of people doing that work are forced to move up the value chain.
They can't compete on costs for those basic tasks anymore.
Right. They have to focus on much higher value, more specialized work, complex system integrations, deep industry-specific expertise, strategic consulting. It's a big structural challenge for the large, generalized IT firms built on scaling up large workforces for those routine tasks.
Which companies are particularly exposed here?
Well, established players with huge global footprints in traditional IT services are feeling this. Cognizant, ticker CTSH, is one example.
CTSH.
And EPAM Systems, ticker EPAM, is another. These companies represent business models that are now confronting clients who are aggressively prioritizing internal automation, often delivered via the major cloud platforms, overpaying for external, generalized human labor through traditional contracts. And this shift can happen relatively quickly because the cost savings from automation can actually help fund the initial AI deployment, creating a kind of self-reinforcing cycle.
Okay, that makes sense. Now for our final category of potential losers, category 3. This seems even more specific, zeroing in on manual data tasks, We're talking data labeling and customer experience business process outsourcing, or CX/BPO.
That's right. These are businesses often built on large teams of people performing high-volume, repetitive tasks that involve looking at data or interacting with customers in predictable ways.
And the pressure here comes from AI getting better at the very tasks these humans were doing.
Exactly. It's driven by the growing sophistication of the AI models themselves, combined with new ways of training them. Together, these advancements are reducing the need for the kind of manual, often low-value labor that, ironically, was essential for creating the earlier generations of AI.
So AI is kind of automating the tasks that were needed to build AI in the first place.
In some ways, yes. It's automating parts of its own creation and refinement pipeline.
That sounds a bit counterintuitive. For years, we heard AI needed armies of human labelers to tag images, transcribe audio, etc. How is that changing? What are the specific tech advancements driving this?
There are really three key things eroding that need. First, foundation models are getting much better. They can learn more effectively from vast amounts of raw, unlabeled data just by understanding context. This reduces the amount of explicit manual pre-training needed.
Okay, better base models require less handholding.
Second, and this is a big one, is the rise of synthetic data generation.
Synthetic data, creating fake data.
Essentially, yes. AI models are becoming so good at simulating reality that they can generate huge, perfectly structured data sets internally. Datasets that are automatically labeled correctly from the start. This can be faster and much cheaper than having humans manually label millions of real-world examples.
Wow. Synthetic data generation sounds quite disruptive. AI isn't just replacing the end user task, it's replacing the human job of training the AI for that task.
That's the potential impact. Why pay 100 people to draw boxes around cars and images if an AI can generate 1 million perfect simulated images of cars with the boxes already drawn in a fraction of the time and cost?
Okay, so foundation models and synthetic data. What was the third factor?
Third is improved reinforcement learning, or RL, pipelines. This means models are getting better at learning through interaction, trial and error, and feedback, rather than relying solely on massive static datasets that were labeled beforehand.
Got it. So these advancements, better foundation models, synthetic data, improved RL, they directly target those manual labeling jobs and also the routine parts of customer service, BPO.
Precisely. The tasks most vulnerable are things like basic data tagging, content moderation, and the really predictable customer interactions handled by CX BPO. Think password resets, simple billing questions, basic tech support steps.
The kind of stuff that follows a script.
Exactly. Those are the tasks most easily and economically handled by sophisticated language models and agentic AI systems. The promise behind that $500 billion valuation isn't just smarter AI. It's AI that can become cheaper, faster, and more self-sufficient over time.
And which companies are most associated with these types of services that might be facing pressure?
Companies like Taskus, ticker TAASK, come to mind. They're a major provider of digital outsourcing, including data annotation and CX services.
PASK.
And also TILIS International, ticker TIXT.
TIXT.
These firms have built successful businesses around providing scalable human workforces for exactly these kinds of standardized tasks. But that reliance on human capacity for routine work is now becoming a potential liability in a world where automation, validated by valuations like OpenAI's, is accelerating so rapidly.
Okay, so we've run through the landscape, the suppliers and platforms benefiting from validated demand and spending, and then the areas facing pressure from capital rotation or direct automation.
Right. It seems this single valuation event for an AI leader really does put pressure across the tech supply chain, creating a clearer separation in the market.
On one side, you have the winners, the companies supplying the essential compute, the cloud platforms, and the massive physical infrastructure needed.
And on the other side, you see pressure on companies perhaps trading more on narrative without matching scale, or those whose core business relies heavily on human labor for standardized, repetitive tasks that AI agents are increasingly able to automate.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If AI agents are already starting to impact budgets for general IT services and high-volume data labeling,
what comes next? Which other sectors that rely heavily on repetitive manual knowledge work might be next in line to face similar pressures from automation? Think about things like routine legal document review, basic transcription services, maybe complex but standardized financial reconciliation tasks.
the underlying logic that's impacting IT services and data labeling could easily extend to any field where standardized high-volume processes are currently handled by human knowledge workers. It's definitely something to watch. Now, just a reminder, this information is provided purely for informational purposes and is not intended as financial advice or a recommendation to buy or sell any security. These views are solely the opinion of the author of the material discussed.
Thank you for joining us on Breaking News to Trading Moves.